welcome geeks, nerds, and people who still live at their parents' house. I'm your host, Lycan22, and today we're going to be doing something very different again. What I've decided to do now is, instead of doing ranking videos and blah 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 blah, all that stuff, since it takes way too long for me to get to number one, what I'm going to do now is just singular reviews. So if it's a new film that I've watched, or it's films of a franchise, I will review them individually, so I can get my full point and opinion out on it without having to sacrifice any time for anybody else watching. So what I'm going to do first is review a very recent film. Again, it's from the superhero genre. And don't worry, I do watch other movies, but there's a lot of superhero movies that I want to get out of the way first before I go on to different franchises like Fast and Furious, or Harry Potter, or Lord of the Rings. I will get to those eventually, I want to get all the superhero stuff out of the way first, because let's just say that's my favourite genre. So, here we go. The film that I'm going to be reviewing today, again, is a recent film, and it was released on HBO Max. I think we already know what it is. Yes, it is Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now, this has been one of my most anticipated films to come out in recent years, mostly because of the recent movement becoming so powerful, and me finally realising that the 2017 theatrical release wasn't as good as I remembered it to be. So, at the end of this video, we will put up on on a graph all the films of the DCEU that I have already ranked, and let's just say a couple of the positions will be changed since my opinion on them again has already changed. But let's have a bit of a background history with the Zack Snyder's Justice League history. So as we know, he was filming Justice League back in late 2016 after the release of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, which, as we can all admit, didn't have the best box office opening and didn't get the best reviews, mostly because of its dark tone, its very slow pacing, and some of its writing not being so great. And this caused Warner Brothers to completely do a 180 and decide that they don't want to go in this direction, and they don't want to cause any more critical reception being that bad. So what they ended up doing was not only re-editing Suicide Squad so it comes off as more comedic and humorous, they also told Zack Snyder to add more humour into his Justice League movie, which originally he wasn't going to do. So they brought in the writer Joss Whedon, who we all know from both the first two Avengers movies and Firefly, to help him rewrite some of his scripts, to add in more humour and a bit more light-hearted tone. But in April of 2017, Zack Snyder and his wife, Deborah, suffered a horrible tragedy when their daughter, Autumn, committed suicide. And I pay my respects to both of them. And eventually, Zack Snyder had to leave production so he and his family could grieve the loss, which led to Warner Brothers giving full directorial control over to Joss Whedon, leading him to do a lot of reshoots and a lot of rewrites of the script. This led to him adding 80 pages of new dialogue, all in Joss Whedon's style, and leading to very, very extensive reshoots that eventually cost around $25 million, which is probably some of the most expensive reshoots that have ever been made. And, well, Warner Brothers told Joss Whedon as well to cut down the runtime to just under 2 hours long, literally a minute under 2 hours. And they still wanted him to release the film in its planned date of November 17th, 2017. And this caused a lot of trouble, because not only, if they had delayed the film, would it have given the studio more time to finish the film properly, they did it for two reasons. One was so the people could keep their annual bonuses, which I find kind of insulting, because the only reason they let this film come out on its planned date was so they can keep their money. And the second reason is, at this time, AT&T was doing a contract signing with Warner Brothers to conjoin the companies, and they thought this wouldn't be a good viewing point for them joining Warner Brothers if they had to delay such a big event movie. so they decided to keep it at its release date. And as we all know, when this film came out, it came out with a huge polarized reception. Actually, worse than that, very mixed reception, with some just destroying the movie with horrible reviews of its CGI, its writing, its direction, its score, its villain especially. And it was a real letdown for any DC fan out there in the world. Now, at this point, I had to come to terms that I had to accept this movie, because even that I heard the Snyder Cut movement was happening, I just thought it would never come into existence. I knew that studios were very stubborn and they wouldn't really listen to a thing that the public was saying. So I tried to come to terms with what I had been given as a Justice League movie. And I wouldn't say it's the worst movie I've seen of all time. It's not even close to that. It's at least watchable. But it got less and less good as I watched it even more, because I could spot the obvious problems. The CGI was again being horrible to look at, especially at Superman's mouth, because at the time he had a mustache. He wasn't allowed to shave off for Mission Impossible, so they had to CGI his upper lip, and it just looks horrible. And Steppenwolf, wow, he was just probably the most bland supervillain of all time at this point. He had a very lackluster design, and the CGI was terrible. So this film was getting worse and worse as I was watching it. But I had to come to terms with it, because that's just what I thought the definitive version of Justice League was going to be. But then in April of last year, we finally got the announcement and confirmation that Zack Snyder's Justice League does exist, and not only is he going to be allowed to finish the film, it will be released next 2021. Now, this was huge news, because this movement had been going on for close to 3 years, and now we're finally getting what we want. Thank you, Warner Brothers, or at least thank you, Zack Snyder, because this film was just a blast. It's one of the most incredible films I have ever sat through, because it's actually the director's vision coming to life. What he intended to make this film in his own right, what he wanted, no studio interference, was on this film. And I'll tell you this is proof that directors deserve to create their own vision and not have to bow down to what the studios think is best. So if we could get down to the specifics, we can do that now. I think the best thing about this film is that the characterization of the characters is hugely improved, especially on characters like Flash and Cyborg. Cyborg, I remember in the theatrical release not really having much of a character arc, and he was, very generic at best. He didn't have much going for him. He just seemed like a boring character. But this film dedicates almost the entire movie to developing the backstory and motive of Cyborg. And it's true what Zack Snyder said. This guy was definitely the heart of the movie. This was just an incredible move, because I went from thinking Cyborg as just a generic superhero who doesn't have much development or likableness about him. But after this film, I am just crazy about Cyborg now. I knew the character years before this film ever came out. I already knew who Cyborg was, and I enjoyed him in comic books. But this just amplified my love for the character by showing what he's gone through, what he thinks about himself after his transformation, how he's coping with it, how it's distancing himself from his father. It's incredible, the character development that they give this character. And it's such a redemption for Cyborg. Even with the Flash as well, who was kind of just like the side comic relief of the film. And he didn't, again, have many great movie moments in the theatrical release. He was just amazing in this film. Again, they gave him a bit more seriousness, like you could really take him seriously. And then when he became comedic, you could appreciate it even more, because no one's cracking jokes left and right. Like in the theatrical release, when he cracked a joke, it legitimately came off as kind of refreshing. And it also just came to like him more. And also, spoilers ahead, because again, this is a spoiler review. I don't really want anybody just going into this review expecting me not to give away any spoilers, but I can't do a review without spoiling anything, so here's your spoiler warning. There's a scene in the final climax of this movie where the Justice League fail, right? They fail to defeat Steppenwolf, and the mother boxes conjoin and start decimating everything around them. But then Flash somehow vibrates at a frequency fast enough to slow time down, and he runs faster than the speed of light to reverse time in a visually gorgeous sequence where he manages to save the world. And I read that Warner Brothers didn't want this scene in the original cut. And then we had to go, do you know what? Do you know what would be more engaging and compelling than that? Have him push a car. There's a Russian family in the original cut that nobody gave a shit about. Honest to God, they were completely pointless to the movie. And yeah, have him push the family to safety. That's all we have for him. What a waste. And then we see this in the Snyder Cut, and it's beautiful. The music, the visuals, the emotion, everything is there in that one sequence, and I think it's the best part of the movie. No joke. There's brilliant action in this film, and fantastic character development and emotion, but that film, I think, was the pinnacle of this movie. It was just amazing. And also Batman as well. Again, it went back to the more serious tone of Batman v Superman, where he's that kind of Batman again. And again, it's very good because, again, you understand his motives of why he would want to change who he was, but you still get the sense that he still is who he is from Batman v Superman. He's still serious. You can still take him seriously. It's just so much better than turning him into a joke from the 2017 theatrical release. This film just does so much better with its characters than the 2017 theatrical release did. It really does justice. There's also some more time dedicated to Aquaman's time in Atlantis. Again, I'll admit the Atlantis sequences are really good in this film because the CGI'd a bit better, it looks a bit more realistic. But again, I think it was much better in James Wan's Aquaman because, again, they had to focus on it completely, and it just looked visually colourful and gorgeous in that film. So they do look better in 2018's Aquaman, but here they managed to improve the look of how it was from the original theatrical release, because it actually looks a bit more realistic. The visuals are a lot better, and we finally get the original introduction of Willem Dafoe's Nuidus Volko, who had been cut out of the theatrical release entirely. And why cut out Willem Dafoe? Honest to God, that's like a crime for a director to do. I mean, just this film has made me realise how much I shouldn't have liked the 2017 theatrical release, and I actually question my own mind now of why I even enjoyed the first film. I feel like I've betrayed my comic book lore and love to this franchise. But anyway, let's just continue. Also, the music score by Tom Holkenborg, or as many people know him as Junkie XL, was phenomenal. I mean, the style of him using like DJ techniques into classical music, it is beautiful to listen to. And yes, I think this is going to lead to my one criticism in the film. And again, it's not really a big criticism, it's just like a nitpick. Just that at best. There's a music sequence in this film whenever Wonder Woman appears in the movie. I think you already know what it is. And, well, it plays like every time she's on screen, if she's about to do something really cool and badass. I mean, the first few times that I heard it, yeah, it was a very nice song. It was powerful, it was engaging. But then, after the first 20 times you hear it, you're like, okay, I think we've had enough. I think we've heard it one too many times. We don't need to keep hearing it and hearing it and hearing it. And yeah, that's my one criticism. It was just that song got kind of overplayed. But again, it's a small nitpick in an otherwise nearly flawless movie. I mean, Danny Elfman, who replaced Tom Holkenborg in the theatrical release, yeah, he's a brilliant composer. I love the majority of his from his musical scores from films like the Batman films, to Alice in Wonderland, to Edward Scissorhands, to Nightmare Before Christmas, to the original Spider-Man trilogy. He has done a lot of good musical scores. It's just Tom Holkenborg was basically perfect for this movie, for a musical score, and he really had no point in doing this. I mean, he didn't really do anything new for the musical score. He kind of remixed his classical Batman score, and that's about it. You know, I didn't really do anything else. So, I'm sorry, Danny Elfman, you really are a great musical composer. It's just, if you're not going to do anything new, you're not really needed. But yeah, the musical score is absolutely phenomenal. Like, literally every score that Tom Holkenborg made, he literally created an entire 46-song soundtrack for this film, and it's just glorious. And yes, let's get to one of the biggest improvements of this film, Steppenwolf. Now, again, as we all know, this guy was a huge botched opportunity in the theatrical release because, again, his design was so goofy and cartoonish. He literally looked like a cartoon. The CGI was that horrible. And he's probably one of the most one-dimensional villains I have ever seen in a movie, where he's always like, Mother, I will save you. You just need to feed. And it's like, what the... I can't listen to this guy without taking him seriously. And, yeah, it was just... Nobody remembered him. Like, there's nothing that he left an impact on. He's basically just the most forgettable DC villain that has ever been shown in a movie. But Zack Snyder managed to, again, do a whole 180 on this character. Not only giving him his original design, where he looks freaking amazing with the spikes and the armor, the face, the CGI was all glorious. And I also loved how in his armor still rippled, even though he's not doing anything. It's like, it shows that it's part of him. It was beautiful to look at. And also, I legit had a lot of development with this character. I mean, okay, he's not one of the more complex villains that have ever been in films, but I still resonated with him because he's basically just a disgruntled general who did something wrong in the past, and he has to pay for it. But he's gone down that road for so long, he just wants to come back home. He just wants to be again accepted by his people. And you can feel the pain that he goes through when he knows that he's still got way too long to wait for it. He's still got a long way to go before he even thinks that they're going to accept him back. It legit leads to some little emotion with the character, and even if it's just little emotion, it's so much better than no emotion at all for him going, Mother, all the time. It's stupid, but this was a huge improvement. And also Darkseid. For the limited screen time that they gave Darkseid, he still left a huge impact because literally every scene that he was in, you felt the atmosphere, you felt his presence, like there was something terrible about to happen. And yeah, I know people are comparing him to Thanos, saying, oh, he's just a copy of Thanos. But technically, no, he isn't, because Darkseid was created in the comics 3 years before Thanos. So technically, Thanos is the copy of Darkseid. But the difference is, Thanos had an entire cinematic universe, 23 movies, right, where the majority of them, he was being built up. You were being told how dangerous he is, how big his presence is, and then when it came to Infinity War, it extremely paid off. But with Darkseid, they had, 2 movies to develop him, but they still managed to give him enough presence to actually feel like he's a massive threat, which I think is a massive accomplishment. And again, the design of him is like completely ripped from the comics. Like, it is so authentic and faithful to Darkseid. And I just gotta say, Zack Snyder, he's done so much wonders. I know a lot of people find him as one of the more divisive directors with his visual style and his form of directing, but the guy has talent. And now that I've rewatched all his films, yes, that's even including Sucker Punch and films like that, but I actually enjoy his visual style. I think it's visually gorgeous. Like, I know it's a lot of slow motion and all that, and granted, this film does have a lot of slow motion. I actually heard that 10% of this film is filmed in slow motion, but it's very nice to look at. It leads to a lot of uniqueness to his form of style. So I think people should cut a little bit more slack off of him for that sort of complaining, but he is a very talented director, and you can tell every minute he does a film, he makes it with so much heart and dedication and motivation, and he just literally puts all his effort into it, and you gotta respect the director for doing that, because that's their job, to create a project where they have just the amount of emotion needed, and he puts all his emotion into every frame that he does, and you gotta respect him for that. And what are the compliments I say? I've got like a whole list here. Oh, yes. The cinematography. Absolutely gorgeous. There are some shots in this film where you just feel like you're transported into a different world. It is just so amazing what this film has accomplished. And also we've got scenes where Superman is in his black suit, and there's a clip where he flies out into space. He's in front of the sun, he's looking down at Earth, and the suit just looks beautiful. If they ever do another Man of Steel or a Superman movie in general with Henry Cavill, they need to give him this suit. He needs to wear it for a few more films before he goes back to his classic red and blue suit. I also think that the tone of the movie, again, is a bit more consistent. Because I remember hearing that the theatrical release I watched, like 90% of the film is reshoots. And that's just unbelievable. That 10% of that film that I watched back in 2017 was what Zack Snyder filmed. That is a complete insult. But this film, it keeps the tone consistent. It's dark, it's slightly gritty, but occasionally has a little bit of humour injected into it for the times it's needed. Not when it's constantly all over the place, mixed with two different styles. It is one singular style with a little bit of humour, and I think it does it well. And as well, I think I can talk about this movie and not talk about the epilogue. As we all know, the film was split into 6 parts, where eventually it would have like a slight intermission, and then name the next part of the movie. And there's chapter 7, which is an epilogue, and it's basically just like 3 post-credit scenes. The first one being basically Deathstroke on that yacht with Lex Luthor, and we know that in the original theatrical release, again, they're setting up like they're going to form the Legion of Doom. But in this film, it's trying to set up the unfortunate Batfleck movie that we'll never see, which was going to be made with Ben Affleck and Joe Manganiello as Deathstroke. But it's telling him Bruce Wayne's identity so Deathstroke can go after him. And I think it's a very powerful sequence because, again, we get more Joe Manganiello's Deathstroke, who I think is a perfect choice for this character. I mean, would have been a shame. It's kind of a shame they never made a Deathstroke movie years before, because I think Ron Perlman would have been a brilliant Deathstroke. But Joe Manganiello is a brilliant option for the role. And I think this is the point where Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor kind of has a bit more credibility to him, because again, he's not playing like super quirky and over the top. Jesse Eisenberg gives him a bit more resistance in this performance, and I kind of respect him for that. He kind of realized that, okay, yeah, I mean, I didn't realize I was playing Lex Luthor in Batman v Superman. I thought I was playing a more over the top character, but now I understand the character. I'm going to give him a bit more resistance, a bit more calm collectiveness, and he does. And I gotta respect Eisenberg for actually taking that criticism to heart and doing what was right. So that was a pretty good sequence. And then, like right after that, we get like a complete dark scene where we're in the nightmare world. And yes, Superman has joined Darkseid and he's taken over the world. And we've got basically Nightmare, Batman, Cyborg, Flash, Mira, and Deathstroke teaming up to get ready for another attack. But then we find out that Joker, again played by Jared Leto, in a brilliant redesign, I must say, is there with them. And him and Batman have this amazing confrontation together. And it's all dialogue, but it is brilliantly written dialogue. I feel every word that is said out of these characters. It is just amazing. And I think this is the time where Jared Leto finally redeemed himself for his Joker performance, because again, as we know, he unfairly got most of his performance cut out of the original Suicide Squad cut, which again I think is a very terrible decision, because I've seen Jared Leto in other movies and he's a terrific actor. So I think seeing him in this film, it's definitely done him some redemption for his Joker performance, because he's brilliant. If he's given the right material, even though he's got very limited screen time, he can change his perception of his performance, and it was very powerful here. He legit came off threatening and goofy at the same time, and it was unbelievable. And again, his redesign, with him looking more like a psychotic killer rather than a gangster or a thug or like a whatever you call it, it was incredible. Like, that is some of the best confrontations of Batman and Joker I've ever seen in any form of media. And then after that sequence, which you probably need to take a breath afterwards, we get our last sequence where, as I forgot to mention, in the middle of the film, Martian Manhunter makes an appearance out of nowhere. It's unbelievable. We finally get Martian Manhunter in a film. And to say that they filmed his sequences in a green screen and not in a proper studio, the CGI actually looks pretty decent. Yeah, to say they didn't have much time to do his scenes, they just managed to fit them in. The CGI on Martian Manhunter actually looks pretty good. It's a good design. So it's basically a sequence where he talks to Bruce Wayne, saying that I've seen what you've done with this team, and I highly respect you for him. I highly respect you, but there's more stuff coming, and I will be here for you. And it's so incredible actually seeing him on screen, because Martian Manhunter is a brilliant DC character, and if he ever had a solo movie, that would be incredible. But for now, I think we can do with what has been given here. So, all in all, Zack Snyder's Justice League is a huge redemption of Zack Snyder, the filmmakers, the cast, just basically the entire film in general has been one redemptive journey. From the downfall all the way to the rise of Justice League, and it is a beautiful journey. I mean, this film is just absolutely gorgeous. So, where are we going to put it in our ranking? So, as we know in my last video, I made some controversial choices in my ranking of the DCEU. We put in Birds of Prey in last place, and basically put in Justice League like halfway through there. So I think we're going to do a complete 180. So we'll put Justice League in last place, since after reviewing Zack Snyder's Justice League, there are millions and millions of problems with it, and I cannot ignore it any longer than I already have. So I'm going to keep Birds of Prey in 9th place, since even though the performances and the visual style are absolutely fantastic, there was a ton of script problems that either didn't go anywhere or were very disjointed, and just many social messages in there I did not particularly enjoy. Even though it has thinly written characters and a very convoluted plot and very slow pacing, I'm going to put Suicide Squad in 8th place, since it still had great entertainment value, and, well, it was just all around entertaining, if I have to be honest. Thanks to the Ultimate Edition, I'm going to put Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice in 7th place, since that film helped me understand the plot a lot more, the visual style was expanded even more, and the action sequences again were thrilling to watch with some brilliant acting performances by the cast. Even though it suffers from the very common problem of sequel overload and suffers from a very long runtime of 2.5 hours, Wonder Woman 1984 is a very worthy sequel to the franchise, and I think it should get a lot more attention. Even though it's a very underwhelming climax, Wonder Woman 2017 features resonant characters, entertaining stories, and brilliant action sequences and a lot of emotional weight. Featuring a much more lighter tone than previous installments, very good story, and amazing characters, Shazam was a very surprising superhero movie that nobody needed, yet they got it, and it was a very, very good movie. The dialogue may have been hawky and the convoluted stories were a bit confusing to follow, but Aquaman featured a lot of impressive visual effects, awesome action sequences, a lot of great performances from the cast, and did the accomplishment of us taking Aquaman seriously. The film may have been divisive with a lot of fans, but Man of Steel manages to show our superhero in a refreshing change of pace, brilliant performances, amazing action sequences, and a very, very somber style that actually makes Man of Steel quite relevant to today's times. An accomplishment in its own right, Zack Snyder's Justice League improves on what Justice League failed to do, with improved characterization, gorgeous visuals, a 4-hour runtime that doesn't drag, and just an all-in-all improvement over its predecessor. Yes, Zack Snyder's Justice League is the definitive DCEU movie, and it would be my preferred viewing of the Justice League movie. I'm still going to watch the Justice League movie, there's no question there. But if I want to talk about my definitive version of Justice League, Zack Snyder's is the one for me. So that is my review of Justice League. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I'm going to do more of these. Like, I'm going to start with the X-Men franchise soon. But again, instead of it being a ranking video, I'm going to do singular reviews of all of their movies. And then at the end of those videos, I will put it in a spot on my ranking, just so you guys can get the idea of where I place the movies. So again, thank you so much for watching. This has been Lakin22's Movie Chat.